Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. I have a bone to pick with Carlos. I don't want to air private laundry. Is it? No, I can't even use my cliche.
Hey, I got a bone to pick with Birkett.
Well, of course you do. You always do. Well, it's nice to have Dave Birkett, but Dave, Carlos just went ahead and scheduled everything. You know, the Michigan State basketball team played until 3, 4 in the morning.
They played until 3 or 4 in the morning?
No, excuse me. I can't even think straight. I got home after 3 and didn't fall asleep till after 4. So, look, normally I'm cool with a 4-hour night. The problem is I've had a lot of them, as I'm sure a lot of journalists have lately. So, but Carlos just willy-nilly, Carlos is, he just occasionally, writes once or twice a week. So he thinks it's cool that you can just kind of do this sort of thing. And I don't get it, Dave. No regard for his colleagues. But anyway, it's nice to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here. Power has gotten to his head. I'll be honest, I was playing basketball last night. I got home at 11. I caught the end of that Michigan State game. Didn't even realize it was on. So,
well, we're just in the Michigan State podcast. There's no such thing as a blue wall, although some of our readers like to disagree. But I know you can talk basketball, Dave. But yeah, Michigan State looked as good as they have all season in beating Indiana. Michigan looked really good beating Michigan State Saturday night. So who knows? Maybe we'll have a fun end of the college basketball season here. We'll see. But that's not why you're here.
Okay, let me just, Dave, you and I know, we've known Shawn way too long. We know all this. I got home at 3 or 4 in the morning, whatever. He goes up to East Lansing. It's just basically like a reunion with all his buddies. Back when he likes to remind us when he did real work and was a beat writer for about half a season or something. He goes up there, he talks to Graham Couch and Rex Road. Brendan Quinn was up there and just all his he's like a pig in slop, and he just BS's for probably another 2 hours after the game. That's why he gets home so late. Not because he's working hard, air quotes, right?
Carlos, you know what? I feel like we should point out to the readers. I don't think that's why Shawn moved the time back from 9 to 9:30 in his text message to us. It wasn't because I'm going to get home late.
No, it was a family issue that I had to be a taxi driver.
So he was getting up early anyway. That's the point. He was getting up early anyway. He just didn't want to spend it with you, Carlos. So I don't know if that says
1 minute sooner.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not somebody that can take naps. I don't know if you guys can. I've never been able to take a nap, and I struggle to even go back to sleep sometimes after I get up at 6 a.m. to use the restroom. But that's probably too much information. Sorry about that.
But you know how it is. Naps, brother. Siestas.
You get older, right? But so this is a day I actually might have tried doing that. If we weren't doing this podcast, I might have tried going back to sleep. Yes, I did see some people last night, Carlos, including weirdly Marcus Bingham, who played for the Spartans last year, all 6'11". I'm just walking kind of in the concourse because my son was up there, and I went to see him. Then I had my niece there, and then Mike Elrick was there.
Oh boy!
And he was texting, so he got to. So we saw him, and then Dan Kilbridge. You guys remember Dan Kilbridge? Used to cover the Spartans. Did a blog. Went off to do your thing, Carlos. He went and wrote about golf.
Smart man.
Anyway, he was just It was something.
There you go. Reunion. Anyway. Shawn Windsor with his people where he's beloved.
But that was for 10 minutes at halftime. Other than that, it was all business. You know how that goes. I mean, it was a big game last night. It was a somber atmosphere to start for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of which, we have somber atmosphere with Dave Birkett. Why is Dave here? Did we finally come through with the honorarium money again?
Basketball. Why not?
You said something about a mock draft.
Oh, yeah. That's my bone to pick. That's my bone to pick.
And I have not seen it, by the way, because you said it when I was about to head to East Lansing, and I've literally not had a chance to see it. So you guys can talk about it, and I'm just going to go get a pillow.
Log into Press, though. You can read it. It's not posted online yet when we're filming this. It will be recorded.
Yeah. Wait, real quick, before we get into the mock draft and the Lions and football and stuff, Dave, do you have any thoughts on the basketball? Have you caught at either of these teams? Or is it just kind of a meh season?
I watched more college basketball this year than I have in, I couldn't tell you, how long, but mostly I'm watching it for my own, I'm trying to steal plays. I'm watching it from a different lens, if you will. So I watch I've watched a lot of Creighton basketball because they always seem to be on my TV. I'm going to be real honest with you. So I do feel like I'm prepared for the when the NCAA brackets come out, rather than just throwing a dart like I have the last couple of years and losing to my daughter in our bracket picks. But if I'm being honest, I don't think Michigan or Michigan State have much of a shot to go deep in the tournament, just based on the some of the talent of the teams at the top of the poll. But there's. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see when these brackets shake out, and especially from Michigan State standpoint, maybe if they can get on a little roll here emotionally, and what that might mean to carry them forward.
No, I'm with you. These aren't vintage teams. John Beilein was Saturday. John Beilein was there Saturday night to honor at the Chrysler when Michigan State played, to honor celebrate the 2013 Final Four national championship game team, and we were talking to him afterwards, and he was talking about the days when he and Izzo were going at each other, and they both had top 5 teams. And those were fun days. This is not that year, I mean, I guess you never know. But by the way, if you're stealing plays, Izzo's baseline out of bounds, sideline out of bounds, take some notes there. He's known for that.
When I was an undergrad at Michigan State, I actually took coaching basketball class taught by Brian Gregory back in the day, but I was covering Michigan State basketball. And so I figured it was worth my while to be sitting in class. And at the time I didn't know if Tom would be coaching any of it or teaching any of it. And so I certainly do have some Michigan State principles in some of the things that I do.
There you go. Okay, that's enough ball.
I'm going to go get my pillow and come back. You guys keep going.
Carlos is falling asleep. No. This is we usually we rely on college basketball around here with both those teams, right, to kind of help propel us from what are usually dreary winters into I don't know to baseball or something. But so yeah, it's good. It's good for the soul when they're good.
Yeah, though it'll be fun. I mean, no matter what, the tournament, right? One of them usually wins a couple of games, and every Big Ten team gets into the tournament. So. It'll be fine.
And then they lose.
One of them loses, one of them wins 1 or 2 or whatever. And
No, I mean the whole of the
Big Ten. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Big Ten, the most overrated basketball conference.
They haven't won a national title since state.
Right? Yeah. It's Purdue's year this year. You just watch.
Nah, they don't have their guards.
Anyway, it's a guards game, right? We're going to see Baylor or somebody like that.
Yeah. No kidding. It is a guards game. That's what you tell your girls, right?
Guards. So yeah, it better be.
All right. So what's going on with the mock draft, Carlos?
Well, is this the momentous day, Dave? Or when this thing comes out, our podcast drops on Thursday, I believe your first mock draft, Dave Birkett's first 1.0 out of, I don't know, what is it, 14 or 15 you do now comes out?
It'll be one every 2 weeks. So we'll probably have 6 before the, before the draft actually, takes place. 2 that last week, but 1 every 2 weeks. So, we've got 1 this week and then go to the combine next week and then, do 1 the week after, kind of what I learned from the combine. If that, anyone sort of moves up or down the draft board a little bit. And, but no, I think the top of the draft, at least, from the little intel I've gathered so far, I think there's 4 players clearly at the top of the draft. And that's the 2 quarterbacks, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, and the top 2 defensive players, Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, whatever order you want to put them in. And those will probably be the first 4 players off the board or some combination of 4 of the first 5, depending on how many quarterbacks go up there. And so, if you're the Lions picking at 6, you're probably missing out on one of the 4 really, truly, elite players in the draft. But still at 6, you should be able to get a pretty good player. And, whether that's your choice of cornerbacks, whether that's another pass rusher, I do think the Lions will have some options there that will emerge that fans will be pretty pleased with, and the organization will be able to add another cornerstone defensive player to the mix.
Now, my bone to pick is this is your mock draft 1.0.
Right.
Meanwhile, NFL Network's Daniel Jeremiah is already in a second mock draft. What have you been doing with your time? Why are we not on Dave Birkett 3.0 by now?
I forget who it was, like Fox Sports or CBS or one of those people was on like mock draft 9.0 or something. I'm thinking to myself, like, we are not even like in March yet, and you've done 9 mock drafts, and that probably goes back to the season. But I like to people give me grief sometimes that I was doing too many mocks. I think I'm very measured in it, right? I'm waiting till this time of year to drop the first one. I'll put another one out, right before free agency with what you learn from the combine, then another one after, free agency, and then things start to heat up a little bit in April. So, well thought out with the calendar of when these things drop. And plus the Lions were they had a pretty good year, right? They won 9 games, so it wasn't like they were 3-14 and we needed to
Wait, did they win 9 games?
Time with,
did
with
they
mock
win 9
drafts
games
in December?
They really won 9 games. That wasn't some kind of fever dream this area had.
The NFL sent out the official draft order last week, and it did say 9-8. So I had to rub my eyes a little bit too, but legitimately.
How many games did you pick, by the way, Dave? Predict.
For them to win? I think I said 8 and 9. I think that's where I came out at. So
that's pretty good. How about you?
You're just taking this time to tweet your own horn. Remember when Carlos, we had that long discussion about how Carlos said I was way off base because he picked 7 or 6 or whatever?
For the record, 6. And I was at 1 and 6, I looked like an optimistic fool, and you guys looked like you were having pipe dreams or fever dreams. What'd you pick, Shawn? 8?
9.
I don't remember what I picked. I just was curious what Carlos.
Well, let me ask you. Let's ask Mr. Birkett. Drop the bomb. Number 6 with your first mock. Who you have Lions taken and why?
Well, number 6. Hopefully everyone's reading the mock draft out there today. But number 6, I had the Lions take Tyree Wilson, the defensive end pass rusher from Texas Tech. Look, again, I think. If the Lions had a shot to get Jalen Carter, the interior lineman from Georgia, I think that would be the missing piece that they need from their defense, just an interior pass rusher. To me, I think he's the best player in the draft. And if you miss out on Will Anderson, look, Tyree Wilson's a pretty good consolation prize right there. Pair him with Aiden Hutchinson, James Houston. All of a sudden, the Lions have a pretty good pass rush. Wilson's big, he's long, he's like 6'6", so he's pretty productive. I think also the way the Lions have built, this organization or this franchise, this team under Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, you look at what they've done, 6 top 75 picks for Brad Holmes so far, and 5 of them have been big guys. They took Aiden Hutchinson. They took, Penei Sewell with their 2 first-round picks. Obviously they took Levi Onwuzurike and Aleem McNeil 2 years ago, and then last year they took Josh Paschal. So the only one who wasn't was Jamison Williams, playmaker. So 5 of their 6 top 75 picks have been bigs. That's how they want to build. They're not done doing that yet. I think taking a defensive lineman there really fits, kind of the mold of what the Lions want to be. Rather than, taking a cornerback, someone to help that secondary, even though that's where they need the most help. So I've got Tyree Wilson sliding to 6. Good chance he could go in the top 5 if Will Levis, the third quarterback, doesn't go in the top 5. And in that case, I probably would have had the Lions take another pass rusher, Miles Murphy from Clemson.
And so this is, I hope this is warming the cockles of Sean Windsor's heart, as I think Jim Harbaugh likes to say, but he loves the line play. He loves, he can tell you nothing about any of the guys who play on the line, but he just loves trench warfare in the NFL and football. That's what it's all about. Even though those guys are just, kind of big, fat, slug guys, but whatever.
Well, they're not slow at all.
No, well, the offensive linemen are. Sorry about that. But this also, Shawn and I were talking about this, I think last week or the week before, about his love affair for the offensive defensive line. And I forgot who it was who said this, but I did look it up. I wrote about it a couple of times with George Young. He's a Hall of Fame executive for the late guy. He passed away, but he was with the GM with the Giants for a long time. But he had something called the Planet Theory, and it was about there are very few humans on the planet who are big enough and fast enough and strong enough to play on the line of scrimmage in the NFL. So when you get a chance to draft them, you should draft them because you can probably find small, fast guys somewhere else in the draft easier. So I totally agree with that, Dave, what you're saying about Brad Holmes and taking some big guys early. It makes a lot of sense. Here's a question for me is if the Lions are picking, they pick 6th, right? So the Seahawks pick 5th. And I think you have them taking Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle from Georgia.
Right.
At fifth, really?
Yeah, I'm at 5. So at 4, the Colts, I'm picking Will Levis, third quarterback off the board in the first 4 picks. At 5, the Seahawks they're on the clock. Do the Lions, Brad Holmes make a move to trade up to get Jalen Carter with the Seahawks? Does he take him? Does he move up to 5 to take him?
Well, I don't know why the Seahawks would do that if that was the case. I mean, look, just for those who haven't seen it, I had quarterbacks going 1-2. And the Bears, there's a lot of smoke out there right now about whether the Bears want to trade Justin Fields and draft Bryce Young or what they want to do. Like, ultimately, I think, and I wrote this in my mock, is that ultimately I just think a quarterback goes number 1. And maybe that's Indy trading up to get a quarterback and then Chicago falling back to 4 or whatever it is, right? The Houston Texans, I think most people think are going to take a quarterback at number 2, whether that's Stroud or Young or whoever. So if you have quarterbacks going in the top 2, right? Arizona, Chicago, if Chicago keeps Justin Fields, obviously they're going with one of those defensive players. Arizona would seem to be going defense. They still have Kyler Murray. He's coming back from an injury. But so, you're 2 of those teams are defensive players. And again, in my eyes, Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, in whatever order, are the top 2 defensive players in the draft. They're the elite tier of defensive players. And I just don't think there are many teams that want to trade down a tier if you can avoid it, right? Unless you're getting some sort of immense draft capital that you need, and probably for the future. And so, maybe in this scenario, Carlos, right? Maybe the Indianapolis Colts are like, well, you know what? We can get Will Levis at 6 if that's who we really want. We want a quarterback. Then you risk the Falcons or the Panthers or somebody coming up too. So I do think it would be in the cards for the Lions and for Brad Holmes to try to deal up to get Jalen Carter after the moves he made last year, the specific move to go up and get, Jamison Williams. But I think that's easier said than done given, maybe the top tier of talent in the draft and the positional needs that these teams have up top. So, I wouldn't put it past Brad Holmes, but I don't know how feasible it is that the Lions could trade up to get a guy like Jalen Carter. And again, Jalen could be number 1 pick by the Chicago Bears if this is all a smoke screen and they're really keeping Justin Fields and they're just trying to drum up some trade interest for the number 1 pick.
I'm curious, and I have no numbers to back this up, Dave, but it seems like it's a little extra risky trading up for a defensive tackle because these guys they don't have I mean, Jalen Carter is a crazy talented player. And by the way, kind of getting back to your point of the front lines, you love Patrick Mahomes, probably you think he's the best quarterback who's ever played.
That's the NFL best football player in the history of the game.
Exactly. He doesn't win the Super Bowl, let alone get to the Super Bowl without Chris Jones.
Right? Chris Jones, yeah.
Jones, sorry, who is one of those kind of hybrid guys that can line up inside and outside. But if he's not getting after Burrow in the game before the Super Bowl in the AFC title game, they don't win that game. They do not win that game without Jones. And to your point, just why Brad Holmes is doing what he's doing. Carlos thinks I have some kind of fetish for line play. No, it's just an understanding of the game. In any case, do you really trade up for a defensive tackle who's already been hurt a little bit? These guys, as to Carlos's point, when you're that big and you move that well, like the Jalen Carters of the world, how long? I don't know. It just seems like to give up extra future stuff for a guy that might be in and out of your lineup. I don't know.
I would say a couple things, to that. I mean, it's a fair point, right? Like, in the positional hierarchy of the NFL, right? Number 1 is quarterback, obviously. Number 2 is pass rusher, and certainly edge, is a little bit higher than interior, but those interior guys are pretty rare. Still, you don't see a lot of trade up for that. Shawn, look, I agree. I mean, you look at what wins in the NFL, right? The Philadelphia Eagles won the NFC. They had the best offensive line in the business this year, right? Better than the Lions. Kansas City Chiefs, no one touched Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl, right? So their offensive line played really well. Those 2 defenses, you mentioned Chris Jones and what he did in the AFC Championship game, and we all know what the Eagles did. I mean, they had the most sacks, or one of the most sacks in NFL history, and 4 players with 10 plus sacks. And when you can put a beast together like that's just, you're going to be competitive for a long time. And I know I've pointed out on here before and writing before that, what the Los Angeles Rams did when Brad Holmes was there and how he's tried to sort of mimic that philosophy of, they drafted Michael Brockers and Robert Quinn and Aaron Donald and really 3 straight drafts, or 3 or 4, maybe it was. And, so that's what they were trying to build, was just this beast of a defensive line. And I do think he wants to do that, here. So if he has the opportunity, knowing what the Lions lack, I do think Jalen Carter could be a trade-up candidate. You're not going up to 1 to get him if you're the Lions. You're not going up to 2 to get him, right? That's probably going to be too cost prohibitive. Carlos's question about moving up to 5, again, if he's there, I don't know that Seattle trades down, but 4, if Indy, doesn't go up to get a quarterback and thinks they can get a quarterback at 6, maybe that's costing a little bit less. I don't see it, happening right now either way, but I certainly would expect Brad to try it if Jalen Carter or Will Anderson or one of these players is sort of the apple of his eye.
He doesn't see it. Dave doesn't see it until mock draft 2.0 drops.
Yeah, you're going to have to check back in mid-March. One of those mock drafts, we'll discuss that scenario.
Well, they haven't.
Or maybe we'll discuss the scenario of the Lions taking a quarterback. Who knows?
And before we discuss anything more, we do need to take a quick break. And I know Carlos wants you to get into a little bit more to was it Wilson and Murphy, and just maybe how good they can be, what their ceiling is. Are they aging Aiden Hutchinson? I mean, who knows? In any case, so we want to hear that from you, and we want to hear a lot more. Carlos is picking apart your mock draft, but we need to take a quick break. For our producers, they've got stuff to do. I don't know what it is, but we'll trust that they know what it is. We will be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Dave, excuse me. No, yeah, fine, Dave, Carlos, whatever.
We're the same person, basically. So yeah,
you are the same person. So Dave is going to expand on these 2 defensive ends. He's got the Lions potentially taking 1 for sure in his first mock, but I don't know why he's doing that, Carlos, because the Lions are going to take a cornerback, aren't they?
Well, the Jeff Okudah thing has worked out so well. Of course, why wouldn't you take a quarterback that high?
Well, and the Sauce Gardner thing didn't, yeah. So you're right. Don't ever do it again, just because one time it didn't go well in a sport where most times it doesn't go well.
Yeah, look, the cornerback, I mean, that's the Lions' biggest need. I don't think anyone would dispute that. They've got the 5th-year option to decide on Okudah this offseason. I don't see them picking that up necessarily. Doesn't mean they won't, but right now I don't know why they would. That considering he hasn't proven it yet. You got Jerry Jacobs, but Mike Hughes is a free agent. Will Harris is a free agent. You're not passing on a really elite cornerback, even if you bring those guys back. So they have significant questions in the secondary, and there's some pretty good cornerbacks available in this draft. And, we were talking, during the break a little bit, like, I think the cornerback that if I was mocking the perfect fit for the Lions from a cornerback would be Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. And just talking to Kirby Joseph about him at various times throughout the year, I'd seen his name and, talked to Kirby and, went up and talked to him again late in the season. And he was like, hey, go watch film of him, lighting this guy. I think it was an Indiana running back. I'm not entirely sure, but, go watch film of the hit that he made there. And I just think, his toughness, some of the physicality that he brings, I had a scout tell me a long time ago, like, hey, you're not drafting a cornerback because he can tackle, like in the first round, right? You're drafting him because he can shut somebody down. And I think you have to keep that in mind, but you add the physical ability that somebody like that has, that just makes him, at least in my eyes, the best fit of the corners among, these guys for the Lions. And there's some good ones. Like I said, Joey Porter, Christian Gonzalez. I think, I don't know how many I put in my first round, but I do think there's, 4, 5, 6 that could go in round 1. There's Maryland's got a pretty good cornerback. South Carolina, Keely Ringo from Georgia, some people like. So there's some pretty good corners out there. I don't see the Lions. I don't know that it's the wisest thing for the Lions to take one at 6. And right now we look at this roster and we say that's their biggest need, but certainly they're going to address that at some point in free agency.
Yeah, that's the 2 things are. One, it's great that Kirby Joseph, NFL cornerback, tells you, go look at, he's watching NFL greatest hits out there, like not telling you about coverage and reading routes and understanding route coverage and all that, but go look at the big hit he laid on him. And then he, probably got hurt after that game. These guys get hurt all the time. That's the problem with the cornerbacks. I think it's kind of a weird position where they're asking them to do a hell of a lot these days. Hit, cover, run support, all that stuff. You should, what Shawn is saying, there's some truth to that. Because like Shawn, there are probably some unthinking monkeys out there in personnel departments who think, Sauce Gardner, we can get our Sauce Gardner. There's not going to be another Sauce Gardner again for a while, defensive rookie of the year. I mean, it's hard to do that.
Nor Patrick Mahomes.
No, I mean, Mahomes, quarterback, there's right every year, one or two quarterbacks who actually are pretty good.
Every year there's a couple of Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, probably not another Patrick Mahomes, But I would also trust, someone like Andy Reid, some expert, maybe Sean McVay, to identify that person. I don't know if the Lions really have that potential yet. Brad Holmes has proven that he can find, offensive players later in the rounds, some defensive help later in the rounds. I mean, last year's draft was amazing. So, but yeah, a cornerback, I think you can find them later. I think everybody wants Devin Witherspoon in the NFL, right? He's probably going to be the first cornerback taken off, taken. And maybe, what did you have him at 12? Was it, or?
I think I had him going to the Jets. Yeah, pairing with Sauce Gardner,
Yeah.
Salah, really, really good.
And that's the thing. If you have a Sauce Gardner, you can draft this guy and miss, but you still have Sauce Gardner, right? The Lions don't really have anybody that they can miss with. They need somebody to contribute. Missing out. If you're talking about, are you talking about drafting them at 6, Shawn? Is that what you're talking about?
No. I thought they should have taken Gardner last year.
Yeah.
And I remember arguing with you guys about that very thing. It's funny. Now, who knows? I mean, Hutchinson obviously has got the chance to be really, really good. So I think it worked out just fine for both teams. But no, I'm not saying they should take a cornerback at 6. I'm curious what Dave thinks. I mean, I can see his mock. I don't want to spoil it here. Dave should say, but who are they going to take with their second first-round pick at 18? Right?
This is going to be a great one.
And by the way, you never told us about, you still need to tell us about these 2 defensive end prospects that you think are likely that's probably what they're going to do at 6 unless they make a move.
Real quick word on those guys. Carlos mentioned the injury problems. I mean, Tyree Wilson, he missed the end of the season last year with a foot injury. So, I do think, I don't know that it's any, I don't know how much.
That doesn't stop Brad Holmes.
He sounds like a Brad Holmes guy already.
Yeah, no, I don't know what sort of medical concern there is there, if anything, but it's just something that I'm sure he'll be examined at the combine. So, who knows what shakes out with that, right? Foot injury, he had surgery, if I'm not mistaken. But, look, I think Pro Football Focus had credited him with 50, quarterback pressures or something like that, which, that's pretty darn good for for any pass rusher, let alone a college guy who played in 9 or 10 games. He had 7 sacks. He started his career at Texas A&M. Like I said, he's 6'6", so he's big and long. The Clemson kid, Miles Murphy, he was a third year guy. There's a lot of upside there. I guess still a young guy. We all know Clemson has put out some really good pass rushers over the years. So, he's, I think you're betting on the upside with him a little bit there, but, he had 6.5 or 7 sacks, and it's the same that Wilson had. So we're not talking about guys that had Aiden Hutchinson level, production last year in the sack department, but, I do think they're both pretty good pass rushers from the little bit that I've seen of them. And I think when you pair that with the Hutchinson and you pair that with the Houston, and you bring back a John Kaminsky to play inside and some of these other parts the Lions have, I just think it makes for a really good pass rush, which is what the Lions, really need, what any defense really needs. So the second pick, for the Lions in the draft, look, I think we should talk about 2 things, right? Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jeremiah had mocked him, the Florida quarterback, to the Lions in his second mock that Carlos referenced earlier.
Covering your tracks, covering your behind.
Well, I had Richardson going 16, so I didn't have him on the board for the Lions. Definitely heard some different things about Richardson, super athlete. Don't know if some of the accuracy issues and whatnot. We'll see how teams end up evaluating him, whether they're really, willing to roll the dice on that. But I understand the need for that with the Lions. And I actually, as much as they need defense, I went with another offensive player because I do think this could be sort of similar to, what I said about the Lions taking a defensive lineman early. When you look at the way they constructed things in LA, when they were at their best, they had a really good running back, one of the best ones in the game, in Todd Gurley. And Bijan Robinson from Texas isn't a Todd Gurley clone by any means, but he's a really talented back. And if you're just taking one of the most talented players in the draft, he's going to be the guy. And look, I know that's going to, my column for Friday, my sort of explainer on the mock draft, I wrote about Bijan a lot in that one because I know that's going to rankle some people, drafting a running back in round one. But I think he's a really good player. And I think there are both, schematic, team building fit reasons to do it and financial reasons that you do it as well.
What do you think, Carlos?
Well, so here's the question is I like this pick. From what I've known about, Bijan Robinson, not that I've watched a ton of tape and all this stuff, but from what I watched, from what I've heard, he's got enough size. He's 6 foot, about 220, good production. He can catch the ball. I mean, we don't know why the running back position has become so undervalued in the NFL. I just don't really understand it, because if you look at what Jamal Williams did last year, right, leading the NFL with 17 touchdowns and strong in short yardage situations, being tough. Without him, the Lions don't have that season. You need that guy. And even though, the lifespan of a running back is not super long, you need those guys. And it's hard to find them. I mean, they hit gold with Jamal, in free agency, paying him very little for a couple of years. But here's the question is, you think that even if Jamal Williams does come back, if they re-sign him as a free agent, you still think that Bijan makes sense for them, right?
Yeah. So look, I think part of the reason why running backs have fallen is because you can find them anywhere, right? You don't have to get a first round guy, right? And I mean, Kansas City Chiefs.
Like they hit the DeAndre Swift has been, yes, in the second round
pick. But no, look, Pacheco, the Kansas City Chiefs leading rusher, and that guy ran hard. He was, maybe he didn't lead him in rushing, but he was their best back at the end of the year, Isaiah Pacheco. He was a 7th round pick. Jamal Williams, who you referenced, I think he was a 4th round pick. So we're talking, I looked this up, it's, there are 15 running backs that ran for 1,000 yards last season. 5 of them were, day 3 draft picks or undrafted free agents. So, and I think if you go back in years past, there's certainly been other examples. Arian Foster, right? There's lots of people that Draftniks would talk about and tell you don't have to spend a 1st round pick. You can get that production at such a, backfield by committee for most teams that, I don't think teams feel the need to spend or invest a lot of draft capital on the position. But, the flip side of that and why I do think it's worth it is because, 5 were, day 3 picks. Well, 10 were 1st or 2nd round picks. And really the best running backs in the game are those players, those game changers that you get up high. And I think that can be said for any position. But, a guy like Robinson, for those out there who haven't, watched any highlights or film of him, I mean, the guy just has, elite vision. Obviously he can run, he can catch the ball. I think he's sort of a do-it-all. And he would still, look, you can bring Jamal Williams back, but Jamal Williams is 27 years old. I think, if you bring him back, you're probably signing him to a 2-year deal for $10 million or whatever it is, right? You're going to have to make that decision before the draft. You still have DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's entering the last year of his rookie deal, hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think Bijan Robinson would give the Lions, he would be to the Lions what Todd Gurley was to the Rams in terms of that guy that is such a threat. Assuming he could stay on the field, right? Health is always a thing with running backs, to your point, Carlos, that you would have to respect that running game and what the Lions do with the play action pass, the type of team they want to be. I just think he would be, a great addition to that offense. And the other component of it is, while I totally get not wanting to spend the draft capital, because you can get one in round 2 or round 4 or round 6 that can maybe be effective. Financially, it actually makes a ton of sense. I mean, so there are, I think it's 4 backs that are making $15 million a season right now on their current contracts. That's Zeke Elliott, that's Christian McCaffrey, that's, I forget who I'll look this up as we're doing it because I wrote it. but so that's $15 million that they're making on average per year, and they're not worth it by the time they get to that level, right? I would never spend that much money on a free agent running back because they're on their second contract. Their best years have been used already. The Elvin Kamara, that's the other one. So none of those three are worth $15 million a year right now. They're getting paid for what they did in the past. Even the guys that are going to get, franchise tag this year, if their teams decide to franchise tag them, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, they're making $10 million a year on a franchise tag. So if you take a running back at 18, guess what you're going to pay him for the life of that contract? $15 million. Last year's number 18 pick got $14.4 million. You average that out, we're talking about $3.5 million a year. So you're paying him more money than maybe you would, one of those backs that you get in round 6, but you're paying for the best years of his career. You retain the right to keep him in year 5 on the franchise tag that wouldn't be cost prohibitive. Even year 6, the 5th-year option in year 5 that wouldn't be cost prohibitive, even in year 6 on the franchise tag. So I think financially, to get an elite running back like Bijan Robinson can be, like Zeke Elliott was early in his career, Kamara was early in his career, McCaffrey maybe still is, but has all those injury problems. You want those backs for the first 4, 5, 6 years of their career, and then you don't need them after that because then, they're beat up by that point in time. So I think if you want a guy like a Todd Gurley, the only way to get him is to take him high in the draft. And when you're the Lions and you have 2 first-round picks at number 18, it's something that makes sense. Is sort of, this is a missing piece that we can have in our offense for the next 4, 5, 6 years that can make us a really good team, a really complete offense for years to come.
So just to recap, you're saying the running back position is basically exploitative. You're saying that they've only got a few good years. You're saying
the whole draft is, yes. Go
it's
ahead.
True. I mean, you're saying that's true.
You're saying that the Lions should lean into here's what I think you're really saying. At number 6, they need to take an offensive tackle or guard, whatever, and lean into the offense all the way, right?
Well, I mean, look, eventually you're going to have to pay Jared Goff if you're going to keep him, right? And we're not, drafting a quarterback in round 1 here. If you keep him, Carlos, you're going to have to pay him.
No.
You're not going to pay DeAndre Swift, right?
Give him another year, Carlos, and see.
I don't, look, I certainly.
Wait, what are you saying about Swift?
My reservations about paying Jared Goff too, and that's why I'm sort of always been on the always quarterback train. If you don't have an elite guy, you want a cheap guy, and that's sort of my view on it. But I mean, regardless, there are some. Right, you're going to have to pay Penei Sewell. You're going to have to pay Amon-Ra St. Brown. There are pieces that you're going to have to pay to keep this offense together. And so if you can get a really good running back, really cheap, that can be a true difference maker for you. And yeah, it's. I mean, that's what NFL teams do. I think Carlos gave me grief, a year or so ago. I wrote, about DeAndre Swift, like, the Lions were, handling him with kids' gloves. And I said, just put him out there and let him play, right? Like, give him 20 snaps a game or 20 touches a game because you're not going to keep him in year 5 anyway. So you might as well get what you can out of him. I mean, that's one line of thinking in the NFL. And so it sucks to say, but I think at the running back position, especially, you realize that's how NFL teams treat, their players at that position.
Well, let me ask you about your mock. Okay. So you mentioned that the Commanders at 16, you have them taking Anthony Richardson, the Florida quarterback.
Martin Mayhew wants a quarterback.
Well, your BFF Martin Mayhew, you're probably locked in on that one. But here's the thing: is I think it was Jeremiah in the last draft or the mock draft. He mocked Anderson to the Lions, right? In this at 18. So, but the question is, like, when you think of this and you think of those the two mocks, right? His mock year draft, you have him taking a running back that supports Jared Goff, that helps the quarterback's best friend is a running back in the run game. And Jeremiah's the other way, like, I'm going to put some gasoline on this thing and torch it. And the minute, if you draft a quarterback, if you draft Will Anderson or any quarterback, but if you draft Anthony him at 18, I'm sorry, Anthony Richardson. I'm sorry, I'm getting Will Anderson mixed up with Richardson. So anyway, if you draft a quarterback, the minute that Jared Goff throws his first incompletion, it's been like, hey, let's throw in the rookie quarterback. We've got to see what he has, right? There's going to be an instant quarterback controversy. Even before that, in camp, in the questions, Brad Holmes did not like Dave Birkett's question in the season-ending press conference when Dave just hinted at maybe the possibility of, and he was like, "What are you going to do, Dave? You got the draft plan here? Let me hear it." And what did you tell him, Dave? What did you tell your buddy Brad?
I mean, that's what I said. I said, I would always consider a quarterback, right? I mean, unless you have, the reality is, my belief, at least in the NFL, right? Unless you have Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or whatever small, maybe Jalen Hurts now, right? Unless you have one of those guys, you should always consider a quarterback, because when it comes time to pay everyone else and you got to give them $45 million a year, that's what Jared Goff would get on an extension, $45 million a year. Like, I just don't know that that's the best thing for building your team. And I get it. My job isn't on the line when I say this, right? And it's a lot easier for me to say, hey, go with a young guy than it is for these teams that are actually in that position to say, you know what, Jared Goff's pretty good for us. Like Brad said, right? Like it's a lot easier to get worse at quarterback than it is to get better. I think that's 100% true. But I also know that if you have an elite guy, you win for a long, long time. Last time I was on the podcast, we talked about that. And, I do think a guy like Anthony Richardson, long way away from being elite, but he has some amazing tools, the skill set, the ability to run, the arm, some things that you can really dream on. And I think Daniel's point in his mock draft was, if you take a guy like Anthony Richardson, he's so far away, he needs to sit and learn for a year or two. And the Lions are in a position to do that. And they're in a position with an extra first-round pick to, maybe take a little bit of a lottery ticket and a gamble and see if they can develop Anthony Richardson into being this phenomenal quarterback. And so, again, I understand that line of thinking. To me, I think if like a Stroud or a Bryce Young was there at 6, those are two of the top 4 players in the draft. I think you'd have to do it if you're the Lions. I'm a little more lukewarm on Richardson just because he's so far away. But I think the Bijan Robinson thing, where when you're rolling with Goff, as it appears the Lions are doing, when you give him everything he needs to succeed, running back, really good offensive line, receivers, playmaker, and Jameson Williams, all these parts that can help elevate that quarterback play and make it more palatable when you pay a guy, $45 million a year or whatever it's going to be when he's not considered, in the elite class of quarterbacks in the NFL.
Do you take Will Levis if he's there at 6?
And the other thing I would just say with that was, if you do end up adding a young rookie quarterback down the road, you have those parts. I think Levis is.
Wait, that's a good spot, man. We need to take one more quick break.
Ooh, you gotta let him think about it. Good.
We're gonna let you think about it. We're gonna have to make the listeners wait here for a second to see if Dave Birkett thinks the Lions should take a quarterback at number 6 from Kentucky. All right, we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. So, Dave, do the Lions take a quarterback at number 6?
Not a quarterback, but Will Levis, if he's there. Forget Stroud and Young. They're not going to be there at 6. But if Will Levis is...
Well, no, but that, yeah. Or do they take, yeah.
No, because we already answered that. I mean, I'm just saying, if those two guys, Dave's like, oh, yeah, if Bryce Young's there at 6, the Lions should probably take him. Yeah, of course. He's not going to last that long. But if Will Levis does, I mean, he's the reasonable option. Or should they wait and take... Long.
Or should they wait and take J.J. McCarthy?
Oh, man.
The J.J. McCarthy sweepstakes are on.
I'm kidding.
Caleb Williams, there's
32 teams are going to draft Caleb Williams next year. So
yeah, no, exactly. So I do not think the Lions will draft a quarterback. I think the Lions are rolling with Jared Goff right now. I think they feel comfortable with him. I think you're, again, more likely to see them sign him to an extension at some point. I don't know if it would be this summer or next, but he's got 2 years left on his deal. I think they're more likely to build up other areas of their team, defense. Maybe it is the running back position, whatever it may be. To try to contend next year and try to put this really good team and really good supporting cast around Jared. So I don't think the Lions will draft a quarterback at 6 or 18 early. If it was me, I would take C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young if they were there at 6. I would have a little more reservation about Will Levis. I mean, that's a guy that I certainly have to do some more work on. I mean, he didn't have a great year this year. He was hurt though for some of it. Kind of like Richardson in that he's got, some traits that you really dream on with the big arm and the mobility. I don't think I would take him at 6 over, one of those pass rushers. If I was in the Lions' shoes, but I'm an always quarterback guy too. So if it was just me running the organization, I'd be considering quarterbacks. But I would certainly put Will Levis ahead of Anthony Richardson in the quarterback pecking order because he's a little more polished and because, Richardson seems so far away from reaching his potential, that, there's, it's less likely that he does, I guess, than Will Levis. But I think if the Lions were to take Will Levis, it would probably be a similar situation in that, Jared Goff would be your quarterback. Will Levis, the timeline would be, a year or two later. But Carlos, what you had said earlier about if they take, Anthony Richardson, the first thing that happens is everyone's screaming for him to come in. I don't know if that's the case if they take Richardson. I mean, yeah, the first round pick, people would want that eventually. But I think everyone realizes how far away he is. But I think with Levis, and if you took him at 6, that's when I think the calls would even be ratcheted up for, hey, we gotta play this guy. Oh, Jared threw an interception, or we lost the game that we shouldn't have. Like, all the fans all of a sudden are like, hey, we gotta play Levis. Why'd we draft this guy? Let's see what we got. Let's save our season this way, and that could be, a recipe for, I guess, crushing, Jared's confidence or otherwise impacting what the Lions do on the field this year if you take a quarterback at 6, because that guy is immediately looming over Jared Goff's shoulders in a way that's even bigger than taking Richardson at 18 would be.
Let's remind the readers just something about this or the listeners that, all NFL players read everything that's written about them. That's what they do. They have a lot of time on their hands. They love to gossip.
Twitter shirts their own name.
And Twitter, and especially negative stuff. They love to get in the mud there and grind their axe about who's against them and whatever. Jared Goff also is a special case where he's kind of low-key admitted that he reads a lot of it. Like, they all pretend they don't read one single word and they're above it all. I think Jared Goff is especially attuned to criticism about himself, especially in the local market, but anywhere. And I think if the Lions draft a quarterback in the first round, no matter where, late first round, whatever, first quarterback since Stafford to be drafted in the first round, that's just setting things up for a lot of dysfunction, a lot of problems, knowing the kind of guy Goff is. He's done well to come back from adversity and all this stuff and the way he was treated in LA and all that. But I think that he's a little more probably fragile than another quarterback might be who's more entrenched. If you're talking like a Stafford, who'd been there 7th or 8th year, someone like that might have been able to handle a bit. Goff has just barely proven himself a little bit, redeemed himself this 1 year. And I think drafting a quarterback would derail all of that because there would be calls in the media, there'd be calls from the fans, there'd be, and right now, Goff's just that guy that the fans aren't completely sold on. I mean, he is the most divisive player in the organization among the fans. Like, what do you think of Jared Goff? You start a bar fight if you throw that question out there. So they got to be really careful. But that's that. I mean, hey, as me and my boy Jeff Rieger would say, we'd love to see the drama. It'd be a fun time for the media if they drafted a quarterback in the first round. But I think well, let me ask you this, though. This is a question for you, Dave. It's just right now, I think, do you believe, I hope the Lions believe this, but do you think that they're thinking of it as this is a win now moment for them, that they're riding high? They finished 9-7, just like you and Sean Windsor predicted they would all along. And they should have made the playoffs if Seattle could have taken care of business in that last game. And they know right now they've got the makings of a playoff team that potentially could do something in the playoffs. And they've got Ben Johnson for at least another year, maybe not much longer. So do you think they're in the win now mode and that's going to guide their draft strategy of we can't really swing the bat or, on a developmental guy. A developmental guy is really in the first day of the draft, maybe even the second day of the draft. Like, we got to get contributors to help us get over that finish line right now.
Well, I think there's two sides to that because, yes, I 100% think that they see this as having a window to compete, an opportunity to compete, right? I mean, you have to, just when you look at the NFC. The Eagles are, they've got 20 free agents and like half of them are starters, right? And they're a really good team, and they're going to have a good roster, and they've got 2 first-round picks too, so they're going to be there for a long time. And the 49ers have a really good team too, but I mean, who's a good team in the NFC North, right? No one. So the Lions they absolutely have an opportunity to compete in 2023. But the flip side of that is, and Brad Holmes' job as general manager is not just to compete in 2023. It's to compete in 2024, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? To make this thing a long-term, competitor. And so, the way for him to do that, or one way to ensure, that the Lions can be that team for a long, long time, is to, nail your quarterback of the future. And as much as I think the Lions, as happy as I think the Lions are with Jared Goff and the way he played this past season, and as much as I do think they believe that, they can have success with him on the field, they know the NFL a lot better than we do. And so, they also have to realize that Jared Goff isn't Patrick Mahomes that's going to take you to 5 straight, AFC championship games, and Joe Burrow, who's right on his heels, is the best quarterback in the NFL. And, whatever shortcomings or limitations he has, if there's an opportunity to upgrade, that maybe that's better for your long-term success. Now, I don't know, and I don't even know if they would know the answer to this yet. Like, is Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, like, what chance do they have of being an upgrade and of reaching that their potential as an upgrade? And again, I think, you can say because of their athletic traits that Levis and Richardson, certainly would have that potential for the Lions, but Richardson is very far away from that because he's so raw. You look at what happened. I mean, Malik Willis fell last year. He was sort of in the same boat, right? This great athlete that, people knew needed some developmental time, and look where he went, right? Trey Lance went, third, but he's barely played. And so he's still in that developmental boat. He's thrown 250 passes or whatever in the past 4 years, so the likelihood of him reaching that potential is not great. And so, I think the Lions have to weigh every option when it comes to quarterback still. And that includes, taking one in the first round. But again, as I look at where they are with the roster, how comfortable they are with Jared Goff, knowing just frankly the realities of it, that, you can save your job for a long time. And that's not something that you think of outwardly, but, it's in the back of your head there that, hey, we can be a really competitive team with Jared Goff as our quarterback for a while. That's the safest route to go, rather than draft some guy. And like you said, maybe, mess with Jared's head a little bit and, have the fans call for him and, know that you've got a decision then to make, that this guy's going to be your quarterback before long, and you'd have to say goodbye to Jared Goff when you do have a good thing going. So I don't think the Lions will draft a quarterback this year.
Oh, okay. So no quarterback. And we are going to have you back, Dave, soon. The next time you do a mock, right? We're just going to keep having you back every time you do a mock.
We're going to do a live podcast from the combine.
Did I tell you guys that I'm only doing 2 mocks this year? I'm not
only
doing
2.
Okay, then we'll have you back for the next mock. But until then, we need to look. We'll talk plenty more football, obviously, as the spring goes, and the draft comes, and the combine, and Dave's going to be at all that, like he always is, doing a great job. But right now, we need to get into our favorite things, and I think get our listeners out of here. Before we do, though, I do have a quick question. Either of you know why Goodfellas is trending on Twitter?
No.
No, I don't either. I just I thought that was randomly interesting if you're of a
good
certain
movie,
age. Though. Yeah, and I saw that Ray Liotta is going to get a Hollywood star in a couple of days, which is weird that he didn't have one already. But in any case, all right. What's your favorite thing? Who wants to go first, Dave or Carlos?
Well, I'll go first. I'll set it up. Dave can think about his. It'll be his favorite basketball play that he designed, I'm sure. But mine is simple. It's short. It's just. This is we're awaiting an ice storm here in Michigan, and it's late February, and everybody's sick of the cold weather and everything.
You mean the warmest summer, one of the 10 warmest summer or winters in the last 100 years?
Yeah, I don't know. It's gray and cold and gross and whatever. Maybe it's a degree warmer, I guess, for you weather nerds. But one thing that has brought a little spark of hope is that we are making plans at the Free Press to begin our spring softball season. We play on Belle Isle. We've invited Dave Birkett and Sean Windsor to come out and support us. Of course, they haven't, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. But it was fun just to be in the group chat with the players. And I am taking over as coach this year because our former assistant editor Tyler Davis is leaving, and so he was the captain last year and the coach, and did a lot of hard work organizing it. So now, because nobody else wanted to do it, basically I'm doing it. But it was fun just to be in the chat, and Jim Schaefer plays, and Sean, are one of our favorite people is Jim Schaefer, and just always fun to chat with him and give him some guff. But it was just nice to talk to those people again and start thinking about softball and playing again, getting outside. So I look forward to it. We're going to play in April. The season starts in a couple of months, and we'll have a tough training camp. I'll probably be fired like one of the NFL coaches at some point. There'll be a rebellion, and they'll Matt Patricia me and turn against me. So we'll see. But I'm really looking forward to it and seeing people again, Sean.
If you get a road game, bring it out by me, and maybe I'll join you.
Yeah, the butler will drive you out to the game to the field. So I'll make sure.
It's tough to make. I got
what about you, Dave?
A lot of kid stuff going on. I should say something about my basketball team, which begins playoffs this week. Good luck to all the girls. It's been a fun ride, a lot of memories. But I'm going to say, all the look. I think everyone knows it was such a tragedy at Michigan State last week. But the way the community, has sort of come together, and I didn't watch, as I told you, much of that Michigan State game last night. Didn't know it was on, but seeing the highlights, reading the stories, seeing the support from Spartan community and fans and players, coaches, from other teams, everyone. I think it's uplifting to see so many people come together, and in times of tragedy to sort of when people need support. To be there. So that's my best thing, that, out of tragedy, we see the good in people a lot of times. And it was good to see that here over the past week.
I'm gonna go ahead and second that. I'm not gonna steal it, as Carlos might accuse me of, because we're rising above that, to Dave's point. But yeah, it was and Carlos and I talked about this a lot before the podcast in the last couple of days. Watching Chrysler Center light up green inside during the moment of silence, and then listen to the Michigan Pep Band play Michigan State's alma mater, or Shadows as it's known. It's one of the more sort of heart I don't know, one of the more compelling and lovely moments I've seen in my sports career. I mean, the Michigan crowd actually applauded when Michigan State took the court. And as I told Carlos recently, that obviously that's not going to stick, but to see that, you just never think you're going to see something like that, and especially in this rivalry has gotten so toxic, but in any rivalry. So, yes, Dave, to your point, to watch people say, hey, you know what, we're human beings first. I know that's cliche, but we've seen that play out this last week, and that's the best thing I've seen too. Carlos?
Yeah, that's well said. That's well said, Sean. And one last, I'll double dip in 1 second favorite thing that I should have mentioned, but we should mention. And this is Andrew Hammond's last day at the Free Press, our esteemed producer.
That's not our favorite thing.
That is my favorite thing, because we're going to miss him. And Andrew's done a lot of hard work behind the scenes, keeping us honest, or scheduling guests, doing all the heavy lifting, Sean. And can we have Andrew say something if he feels like saying something as a goodbye on this podcast?
Yeah. Are you there?
Yeah. Wow.
Don't cry.
No, I'm not gonna cry.
Don't do a Michael Jordan farewell.
No, it's okay.
Oh, no. I'm not going to.
It's okay to cry.
It's
Carlos and I cry all the time.
yeah, usually to me. No, seriously, guys. It's funny because, if we peel back the curtain a little bit, this was supposed to be, maybe for a few weeks, maybe a month. And then it turned into nearly a year. And not only did I form a good bond with colleagues, but I'd like to call all three of you guys friends. And I appreciate the support and your help in making this podcast grow even further. So I want to say thank you to all three of you guys. You guys provide me with laughs, made me think, and made me learn a little bit about the great state of Michigan, the city of Detroit, and Lions fandom, and something I've grown to respect in my time being here is just how passionate and how much people care about not just the Lions, but sports in this city. And it's pretty special. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you. And you can absolutely go.
Too.
Yeah, no, he's going to one of the more underrated cities in this country, in Birmingham, Alabama. It's a beautiful place. It's kind of nestled in some hills, and the food is great. The history is is difficult in some ways, but it's also they're aware of it, and it's right out there. I don't know. It's a really interesting and kind of a cool city in a lot of ways, and I think you're going to do great down there. And we're going to miss you here. And like I said,
miss you guys.
Yeah, call us friends. Thank you, man. Carlos, who else do we need to thank? Oh, we need to thank Dave for joining us, taking time away from his playbook, drawing up slobs and blobs and all that good stuff. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure. Who else, Carlos?
We have to thank, Andrew. We've already thanked him. And by the way, he's going to take the job as a sports editor at AL.com in Alabama. But we need to thank Robin Chan, our other producer, does the hard work behind the scenes, executive producer and sports editor Kirkland Crawford. And we also have to thank executive producer and interim editor Anjanette Delgado, who is, by the way, our Mookie Wilson, Shawn, for the softball team. Plays a great right field, and we're going to get in trouble because that was the only time we mentioned her. So we're going to get chastised probably. But mostly, who do we need to thank? The listeners. We probably just have one listener, but we are very grateful to have that listener. But where do you find this podcast, Shawn?
Wherever you find your favorite podcast. Obviously you found it if you're listening, but we'll say it anyway because that's what we do. It's what every podcast does. You say, hey, go to Apple, go to Spotify. That's great. The point is subscribe. Rate us also, but mainly subscribe, and then let us know what you think. That's always nice. Whether you're going to be nice in what you let us know or not, it doesn't matter. Just let us know. All right, Carlos, we want to again thank everybody. Thank you, Andrew. Good luck down in Alabama. We will Carlos and I will be back next week with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.